Over the past few weeks, I've had a number of my MSP friends talk about losing clients, and not just little ones. The thing is that this happens from time to time, and especially if you look back at history, it's happened a number of times. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit about what's going on, but more importantly, about how to reduce the likelihood that a client is going to leave, because there are some really core strategies that you can use. My name is Adam Henneman. Welcome to Ramblings of a Geek. I've been in the MSP space for the better part of a couple decades, and I've seen a few of these waves come and go. And let's talk today about how you can reduce the risk of clients leaving because you've done such a great job for them. The overall economy doesn't like uncertainty. And when you think back to 2008, there was all kinds of stuff going on there, and there was bad news and uncertainty and all these things, right? You think back to COVID. COVID also created a ton of uncertainty, especially in the early days. Overall, the MSP space did pretty well, but a lot of businesses closed up or had a dramatic downturn, so we had to kind of adjust to that pretty quickly, right? Well, right now we have a lot of uncertainty. A lot of businesses are trying to kind of shrink their budgets a little bit, and lots of times businesses see us, MSPs, IT in general, as a cost center for the business. And when businesses see something as a cost center, one of their natural tendencies is to try to reduce those cost centers. Much like if I'm advising you as an MSP, maybe don't pay for all the extra things if you don't necessarily need to, right? So let's talk about some of the things you can do to demonstrate value to your clients, reduce the cost center mentality, and really kind of move things forward and minimize the risk of you losing a good client just due to generic economic uncertainty. The first area to lean into with all of this is account management, right? You need to show that value of being a strong account manager with your clients, right? This isn't just reviewing tickets and those kinds of things. This is truly giving them roadmaps and reducing their risk and those kinds of conversations that are really, really important. Now, I've created a couple of videos, so I'll drop those videos up above as it relates to all things account management. But the short version of this is you want to have strong meetings with your clients that you have the business owners and maybe the executives show up to, and really have value-based conversations around how you can help them with all things in their world, more than just fixing tickets and those kinds of things. The next thing is talk about all things value, right? How are you bringing value to them, right? Talk about uptime and minimizing their risks and helping them bring efficiencies into their business, right? This is some of the areas where when you know what's really going on with their business and you understand their business, you can really show a lot of value. And here's the thing is that this is one of those areas where having that target client profile and really understanding how your clients do work is really, really important. If you understand how they make money and help them make more money or be more efficient at doing that, is much harder for them to fire you because, of course, you've brought a lot more value into their business. So think about how you can show your value to your clients. And it's not just, we fixed the computer and replaced some things, right? It's we kept your uptime to 100% or 99%, or we reduced some of the issues that your users have been having, or we were able to speed up processes or do more things with less people, those kinds of things, like those conversations that really require you to understand their business to a degree become really, really important. All of this kind of lends itself to being their trusted advisor, right? The better you can do to be basically on their board, not necessarily literally on their board, but really be part of their executive committee and how they operate their business, the better off you're going to be, right? If they call you for all things IT, everything, not just, fix my computer or we have an app that needs to be deployed or whatever, and they are including you in some of those executive type meetings, you're probably pretty safe. But if you're not at that level, this is where you want to get, this is kind of where you want to aim at, right? And this isn't talking about technical stuff, right? This is really, again, about really demonstrating that you understand their business and that you've got ideas and ability to help them move things forward. And I hate to keep harping on the concept around target client profile, but this is where when you know their businesses, you understand what's going on and you can speak their language, especially throughout the entire process, not just the sales process, but through the account management and the actual doing the technical work, you are in so much better spot. The reality is that many IT providers will, just take any client that's out there. And for the most part, you're not going to turn away business, and nor should you. But it's really hard to keep a lot of different types of businesses happy, especially when there's any kind of economic uncertainties, because a certain subset are going to be trying to tighten their belt. And if you don't have that strong relationship there, you don't have the kind of the built-in like understanding about what's going on in their world, it's hard for them to see you as the trusted business advisor that you are, and really more of that cost center mentality, right? So really all of this and most of this stuff, and really just overall normal client longevity is really about being a good trusted advisor to them, and them having them understand that you are bringing like real legitimate value to their business. If you're getting some value out of this video, please do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button for me, please. One of the ways you can do this, and a really great way in my opinion, is to give them really good recommendations all along the way, right? Make sure that you are paying attention to what's going on in their industry, paying attention to what they really do need from you. Maybe they don't even know what they need from you, but like give them like real good advice and be proactive about it, right? Check in with them, send them articles about things that you're seeing in their space, and have you thought about this, and like those types of conversations, because that shows that you're paying attention to what they have going on. And this is part of what I would recommend you do in the sales process too, but you should kind of keep selling to these clients, especially your bigger ones, right? Keep selling to them a little bit about what the value you bring to their business, and really that you understand them, right? I was talking to an MSP that is primarily in the creative industry, and one of their best clients is trying to kind of cut back on some expenses, and I was talking to her, and she was really frustrated about the whole situation, which I would be myself, and after we talked about stuff, a lot of what the value she brings was under-realized, and when they had a little bit of a change going on internally, they sort of brought somebody in to kind of help save money, which is a sort of an interesting idea, but they brought someone in to save money, and this person doesn't realize all of the value that she brings to this organization. So as we were talking, it became clear to her and to us that we were kind of trying to help kind of talk through the situation, that the best course of action was to really show that value and get to know the person that they brought in to kind of cut costs and those kinds of things. So she was in a much better spot after we kind of figured out what to do about it. And what had happened was lots of different things were kind of commingled, right? It was support and projects and all these other things, and instead of seeing IT and the ongoing support as this much of stuff, they just saw this big mess of things, which was a bunch of projects and stuff commingled into one. And when she can then turn around to say, okay, these costs were a bunch of different things, and this was this project that was really important because of this, and this was an office move, and this was a whatever, and this part's the support. So let's do the support piece and keep the support kind of off to the side, and let's say this is just that's table stakes, but let's talk about all the different other things, because there's probably some savings we can bring for you there, but you really can't cut back on the support, because honestly, you need it, right? And so it's those types of conversations, and you have to have that underlying strong relationship with the client. Otherwise, you might not even get a chance to have that conversation with them. Not only do I do these videos, but I also release the newsletter about once a month. Go ahead and subscribe to my newsletter. I'll put it on the screen and I'll drop it in the description of the video below. So let's say you have a client that says, hey, I need to cut my budget by whatever number of dollars or percentages or whatever that looks like for you. And you might wonder, what do I do? Like what should I do in this case? And really there's a couple options. Obviously there's a bunch of different options, but the two that come to mind, at least the ones that usually come up, are, do I reduce services, or do I give some sort of a discount? Now, for a variety of reasons, I'm not a big fan of giving a discount. Giving a discount, which is really you charging less for the full set of services, is a really tough pill to swallow, and it's a race to the bottom, right? It's really going to impact your gross margin, and if you need to, I guess maybe you go that route, but I really would advise that you don't. Instead, if a client says, hey, I need to reduce my outflow in cash to you every single month, I would look to cut services, right? Do they need all the different things that they're paying for? Can you reduce some services? Have they cut, if they're doing some layoffs, if they're letting people go, then you should probably representatively lower your bill to them because they have fewer users or fewer endpoints or whatever, right? Think about some of those things. Look for ways to maybe give them some discounts, right? This is where maybe that Microsoft NCE thing maybe helps you if you aren't already taking advantage of that. Maybe if they're willing to pay an annual NCE fee and save that percentages on the things, like those are some conversations you can have to potentially reduce some of their rates. You can also help them reduce other IT spend as well. Maybe it's not your spend, but maybe it's some of the other services, right? So look to potentially find other places within their books to help them on the IT side. And if they decide that they do need to cut your bill, then you need to figure out what services you can cut that won't necessarily impact them as much. Now, the reality is if they do turn things off and they cut some of your services, that might leave them with some risk. And if they have a bit of risk because of cuts they've made, then I think it would be worthwhile, in my opinion, to have them sign a declination letter, right? This is a letter that basically says you are cutting service X, and the service X provides these types of services and reduces the risk in some way, shape, or form. And with these services cut, you are now open to these risks, and we won't turn them back on until you tell us in writing. Like those kinds of things I think are really important to think about. Anytime you want to turn off services for a client, especially things that are, like, in your opinion, vital to what they do, I think a declination letter is warranted. I'll link up above to another video that talks a little bit about declination letters as well. Another really great strategy is to make sure that you have more than one contact when it comes to IT related stuff. This is where you have multiple connection points within the organization, because if the owner or some person is saying, hey, we probably should cut IT, or we might want to find a cheaper MSP, or whatever that looks like, if you've got more than one person in there, you might have somebody else fighting on your behalf to keep you around. If you just have one point of contact, even if it's the owner, if the owner decides that they want to cut rates, or their CFO gets them convinced that they need to reduce their spend, then you might be on the chopping block. So having multiple layers of contact within the organization is really important. I also want to throw this out there that if you have account management that isn't owner-led, I would also strongly recommend that the account manager has multiple points of contact as well as the owner as well. So if you are an owner that has an account management staff, you should probably maintain at least a little bit of a relationship with the ownership or the top executives of your clients, just for this very purpose, right? Just keep a little bit of a relationship intact, because I say this all the time, is that we live in a relationship business, right? The MSP space is largely relationship driven. And if the clients only see us and see you as the computer support people, it's really easy to cut the computer support people because that's a commodity, right? So build the relationships, maintain these relationships. It's really, really important to talk to multiple people at the company, so that way you have more than one champion. And when you do all of these things, right, you have a good account management practice, and you have a roadmap for them, and you're kind of driving them down that path. And when you show the value of what you bring to the organization with all things business understanding and understanding how they operate and working to generate more efficiencies and increasing their revenues because you understand how they make money, and then you're doing all those other pieces. When you do all those things well and you continue with these relationships and you have multiple touch points, you're much less likely to lose a client, especially lose a client that you've done otherwise good work for. One thing I haven't covered in this video is that sometimes you have a client that's difficult and they want to cut costs, right? Well, you could do a couple things. One, you can let them go and say, see you later, right? The other thing is you could say, what, I'm just not going to cut costs, and you're going to have to fire me for that. The reality is that not every client is a good client. So think about what that might look like for you and how you might want to handle that. But I've actually talked to a couple of different MSPs recently where they said, this client is leaving because they found a cheaper provider, and then I said good riddance, right? That sometimes happens. When you do all of these things, right, you maintain a good relationship, you have a good account management practice, and you show them value, and you kind of reaffirm the value over time, and you already speak their language, and you showing them how they can make more money and reduce downtime and increase efficiencies and all of those things, and you do that on a regular basis, and the better relationship you have with the client, the less likely they are to see you as a true cost center, and it will be much less likely for them to let you go, especially presuming you're doing okay service. Now, if you are struggling with service, that's an entirely different type of situation, right? That said, you actually, if you do all these other pieces and your service isn't great but not terrible, you might be able to hold on to clients too, but you probably need to then focus on service. I think it's not a bad idea for you to evaluate kind of why your clients might be saying, hey, I want to leave. If it's service related, then of course go fix service. But the reality is that what I'm seeing currently is it's a little bit of all of the things. It's not just service related. There's a lot of clients who are just trying to save money for a variety of reasons. One thing that, if you can get to this level, is going to be pretty tough for them to fire you, is if you can really become part of their executive team, right? If you are able to sit in on either board meetings or executive steering committees and those kinds of things, and they trust you as a true business partner and as almost a stakeholder in their organization, even though obviously you're a hired third party, you're probably going to do okay and continue developing those relationships. Now, those relationships are hard to get into, but they are very, very sticky, presuming you do a good job of doing the appropriate computer support and some of the things you actually need to do in addition to showing all the value. So when you think about losing clients, yeah, it sucks. But there are some things you can do to minimize that risk. Take the pieces from this video and put them into practice within your organization, and hopefully you'll minimize your client turnover. Now, the other piece is that if there's a kind of turnover happening in the space, you can probably spend some time on sales and go pick up some new clients as well. So don't let this opportunity go to waste. I'm going to go ahead and link up above to some sales related videos as it relates to prospecting and finding new clients, because if clients are a little squirrely, they're still looking for another MSP, because most clients that have had an MSP need some version of an MSP out there. Don't let that go to waste either. Thanks for coming on this ramble with me, and I hope to see you on the next one.